So Samson Kambalu, here we are in your new exhibition, New Liberia, at Modern Art Oxford. Could you start, please, by telling us about the concept around this exhibition that's really playing with the notion of social freedom?
Yeah. New Liberia is actually a utopia that comes from my research on early 20th century Malawian modernism and syncretic culture. You know, these things are at the heart of my art practice. Right? My filmmaking, my multimedia works. A lot of the ideas that I've employed come from this secretive area of research. Mm-hmm. The idea of New Liberia belongs to a freedom fighter in the early 20th century, Malawian preacher and Pan-Africanist. He led an uprising against colonial rule in 1915. And his idea was to end injustices, colonial injustices, and turn Malawi into a new Liberia.
So the concept of New Liberia is harking back to this hero of Malawian independence, John Chilembwe, who himself was harking back to the formation of Liberia, which was the first, well, the earliest republic in Africa that was actually set up with huge amounts of support and instigation from America, in fact, and the idea of equal rights and Africa for Africans that was coming there. So that kind of conversation between America and Africa, and also the relationship with British colonialism and beyond.
Yes, he was inspired, in America he was inspired by a lot of emancipation movements, you know, like of John Brown, of Nat Turner, and the like. And so yeah, this is, he's working under, not only with the help of African-American sponsors, but also their ideas. Is trying to, you know.
And ideas like self-respect and the idea of self-government.
Yeah, equality, self-governance, dignity, self-respect, sovereignty. Yeah. So Chilembwe is significant in that he was the first Malawian, if you like, to resist colonialism, not under the name of any particular tribe, but as a modern person, as a modern man. Yeah. And he's the first Pan-Africanist, actually, to die in Africa doing so. So it was real ahead of his time, because he was thinking now beyond the old networks, tribal networks, to more kind of a more modern, unified Malawi. And for me, I see this utopia as not existing in a specific place necessarily. Because yes, this world, the utopia did take up, because Chilembwe, following his death, word spread of his, you know, of what he wanted to do. And this New Liberia took root, and it doesn't have a specific place. For me, it's everywhere. And so my work here is being inspired by places I've been. I've traveled to in America, in Europe, Russia, in Africa. All these places are places of New Liberia, and this is how it connects to contemporary emancipatory movement, if you like, or such as Black Lives Matter. I always say, yeah, the New Liberia is everywhere. In fact, you can find it if you know how to look. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this particular moment that we're in now as well, you felt that there is a sea change, a shift, a genuine shift in attitudes as regards social justice at the moment. Would you speak a bit about that?
I'm inspired by methods of resistance of those times to address issues that I face now. Some of those issues, let's say, racial justice, fight for recognition for everybody, dignity, equality. Those are the issues that Chilembwe was fighting for. And so I go back to that time. These people were fighting and learn from them and borrow aspects.
So can we talk a bit, to sort of step back one more, about the now as the secret society who come in to kind of perform within these costumes that are referred to as masks. And they're in various different forms. And this, you've chosen the elephant, the authoritative form.
Masks generally represent ideology, the work of ideology, or the work of the imaginary, things we imagine about ourselves, or things that we would like other people to believe about ourselves. And there are things that also separate us from community. So the costumes and the masks, every time they come back, is to remind people of their origins from this pool of possibility.
You've also mentioned that these two quilts of flags that flank the elephants, you've described these in terms of drawing too, as if the elephants are drawing these flags.
I think that the thing that I'm emphasizing in my flags are the partial thing, you know, a different sense of time. You know, I think they go beyond the symbolic into the universal things, a sense of even non-linear time. There's a lot of non-linearity in the way I construct my flags. You can start, you can go to them from anywhere. They move beyond these symbols that divide us into the realm of timelessness, if you like, which for me connects, which is for me the time of New Liberia. There's definitely a worship of the partial thing. Countries are sliced up and reconstructed, and we have to be happy with that. Things don't have to be whole or complete. There's a tendency in modern times to want things to be complete and perfect. But what if the imperfection of societies, of communities, the diversity of communities, the multiplicity of communities was a thing, as opposed to homogeneous, if you like, homogeneous? It's a proposition to look. Usually flags are seen as complete things. Black, red, green, symbolic, unmovable.
Here we are in the installation, which shows your Niao cinema, which you're best known for, as well as this new podium installation. Would you talk first about the Niao cinema?
My whole show is like a cinema palace, you know. You walk in the lobby there, you see all these elephants, and then, you know, the other rooms. This feels like the theater, right? You're finally in it. And you see all these flickering, fragmented films, as if, you know, and the whole room feels like a spaceship, right? Or maybe like a plane that just crashed down and all this stuff has come from the roof. You know, stuff that come out of the roof when you've crashed into the sea or something. It feels like it. Look at all these, the projectors have just come out like out of a belly. Anyway, it's all part of Niao cinema. Niao cinema comes from the tradition of what's called cinema of attractions. And cinema of attraction is about the valuing of the momentous over the durational. So what you want to do with a cinema of attraction is you want it action-packed. So all these things I'm describing contribute to the action that's in these films. There's no boring bits in these films. It's just action from one clip to the other. This is the film as I would have watched it when I was growing up in Malawi. And by the way, I want to point out that this projectionist, also often their projectors were old, so they would break down all the time. And they would use the breaking down of film as part of the aesthetic. And this is what is happening also in my film. My film are dialectical, if you like. They operate on failure, actually, you know. So they're psychogeographical in that I don't prepare or script anything. I make them to found objects. It's almost like the mask makers. They make their masks in the bush and they work with whatever is around them. So if the mask is made near banana trees, it will take the nature of banana trees. If it's made near lions, it will make... And a lot of the masks are also of animals because that's the psychogeography of the bush in which these mask makers are making their masks. So the same with me. I make my films to found film sets in cities where I go, either on a book tour, as I did earlier, or now from research. And it's me wrestling with specific histories of those places as an African, my own sense of time, the psychology. These are the things, all the ghosts that I have to negotiate in order to find my place.
And it's valuable for people to understand as well. Within these, they're not portraits of you. It's not in that, whilst they were, how you started them was a way of navigating through different countries and different places. However, as an initiated now, you're also actually representing almost like an everyman figure, a kind of, you're expressing freedoms in public spaces that anybody could actually. And so it's not a depiction of yourself as an individual, it's more somebody taking the opportunity, finding the new Liberia moments, those moments of freedom within a space to have these.
Yeah, it's actually now when you are wearing masks. Yeah. It's now when I wear a mask, but when I'm making my films, this is away from my ego. My ego and personal, I do what's been given to me. It's like going on a hunt and I catch what's been presented before me. If I see myself having to jump up or down in public, I do it. When in normal behavior, I could never do it, maybe out of pride or out of, but the films allow me to operate beyond my own ego into a certain kind of universal time, if you like, and this is the time that connects me to other people. And indeed, this process of making them is a very socialized affair. I have made a lot of friends through these films. And anyway, but I like that idea of superfluous objects, if you like. This is very much part of the Nyao tradition, because they allude to things like beyond utility. And so when you come across a stage that's not necessarily functional, it adds up to that. It points out to that. But yes, we can use it.
But also, it kind of connects to how you use public space in your films. And you're also inviting visitors to come and perhaps behave slightly differently than they would do normally in this public space by reading aloud these texts, the books, and choosing to perform or not, much like you would.
Yes, the films are silent. So maybe the stage then provides the soundtrack. I have sometimes showed these films and I invite musicians to play to them. This time I've invited readers to read.
And the trial section that people are invited to read out is specifically about the inquiry into the right for an individual to wear their own hat as a black Malawian, Nyasaland at that point, in front of a white person.
Yes. So basically, there are passages there. People used to get shot. You could get killed by not taking off a hat. The whites would move around with revolvers, and they would often pull them out if you didn't obey.
So Samson, you use photography a lot in a number of different interesting ways in your work, often as witness or evidence to different things. Can you talk about the photographs in this room and why they're shown at the height they are?
They are basically the Church of John Chilembo, as I say. He, with the help of sponsors from America and indeed contribution from his African congregation, he built this magnificent church to rival the white missionaries, just to show equality, that if an African can build a church as magnificent as the European missionaries, then surely he was equal to those Europeans. And of course, Chilembo was opposed in this. And when he led the uprising against these injustices, they destroyed his church in the aftermath. So this photograph shows a moment when I think, explosives were planted around the church and it's razed to the ground. And I hear that these photographs were made into postcards, actually colonial postcards. But later on, they seem to have been edited for other purposes and put online. And we found these edited photographs in the archive, that's a Malawi archive. And then there was another person who owned the original glass plates.
Yeah, we're very lucky to show these thanks to a collector who is I think we spoke about this before, that he's an amateur historian who's interested in Malawian history. He lived and worked in Malawi for a while, and he became very interested in the figure of John Chilembwe and has been collecting ephemera for a long time. So we were lucky enough to borrow these postcards, these commemorative postcards which were produced after the demolition of this church, and it's his versions of those postcards which we're showing here. But you were saying before in your research, you originally came across these photos online only. That was the main way that you found them, and this is also why they're cropped, because in the online resource, the digital versions had been altered already.
Yeah, I saw a sequence, and actually when I saw a sequence, I showed them in my Ruskin seminars alongside the Lumiere brothers' films of the war. You know, there's a film where the Lumiere brothers film a war being knocked down. They knock it down and then they reverse the film, so the war appears rising up again. And this is what I saw in these photographs. They seem to be animating up and down, contrary to the church being destroyed. It seems to be rising as it was being destroyed. Very symbolic of, Chilembwe's ideas of New Liberia.
And likewise, you've decided to present the church rising and falling around the room.
Yeah,
so it has these different stages.
All around. It's around. It's just stereographic, panoramic. So when you move around this church, since there is no beginning, the church seems to be rising and falling. This just shows the resilience of Chilembwe's ideas. And that notion of indestructibility is very Nyao, Nyao is something that exists outside systems, something that comes in and subverts systems and forms. It alludes something universal to the eternal, if you like, to, as I say, to time, outside work and necessity. They seem, the church, I think, like my films seem to appear to do a performance there, rising up and down. Alluding to a certain subversive, as I say, subversive notion of time. So I thought when you walked in here, you should just feel like you're walking into an album, perhaps, whose some of its photographs are slipping down, and the text around it, because some of the text used in stereographs. Yeah, it's like walking into a vintage album that's in motion, There's a lot of movement in this show, a lot of elevation, a lot of falling down, a lot of, it's all, I think, elements of film. It's all elements that, let's say, in traditional masking, are used to generate a sense of play, a sense of play that eventually pushes everybody into a state of generosity, if you like, a childlike state of generosity.